Today we're going to talk about multiple offer situations. They are something that as a buyer you're going to run into. It is just almost a given these days. And even though it usually comes down to price, it almost always comes down to price. There are some things we can do to make your offer better so that the seller looks at it and says, yes, I want to accept yours. So let's talk about price first and foremost, because that is really what it comes down to. And let's say a property is listed, it doesn't matter what it's listed at, but we're going to say $500,000 because that's a nice round easy number. Typically, we are looking at going anywhere from $540 to $575 on the price. Yes, we are seriously looking at making an offer that much above the list price. So if that freaks you out, we need to adjust your price down a little bit. So if like 500 is your max, we probably don't need to be looking at properties over 450. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to offer over list price almost every single time, and that's just part of real estate today. The other part of that is that there are some things we can do with the price that might make it a little bit more attractive. One is that we can offer to pay some of the seller's closing costs. Now, the seller's closing costs, there are three big ones. One is commission. So we can offer to pay the buyer's agent commission, my commission, or we can even offer to pay the seller's listing agent commission. That's something that we can do. We can also offer to pay costs that they typically pay, such as title insurance. And that is something that ranges anywhere from a couple $1,000s on up, depending upon the sales price. And there's owner's title insurance and lender's title insurance. And you are typically paying for the lender's title, but you can offer to pay for the owner's title. That's something that'll save the owner money, and they'll like that. The other thing is tax prorations. So as you probably know, we pay taxes in arrears in Chicago, and that means that we usually get a credit from the seller for unpaid taxes, and we also prorate them at 105, 110, 115% of the previous year's taxes. So if we think that the taxes are going to be $10,000, let's say, we're going to ask for 110%, which would be $11,000. What if we asked for only 90%, $9,000? Not a big difference, but it's one of those things where they could say, oh, that's not bad. Or what if we said, we're not even going to ask you to pay any of the back taxes. We're just going to pick that up ourselves. Obviously, more money out of your pocket, but one way to strategically win with the seller. So there's a couple of other things that we can do. And these come down to your level of comfort with buying the house. I encourage all of my buyers to get an inspection. There are two things that we can do though with that inspection. One is we can say that we are buying this property as is, meaning we're not going to ask for any repair requests. So if something major comes up, we're going to probably take a hike. The foundation is cracked. There's all sorts of problems with the property. We're not going to go forward and buy it. Now, we'll probably tell the seller ahead of time, hey, we wanted to buy it, but we've got this issue. And they may say, wait, don't terminate the contract yet. We want to hear what you have to say at least. The other option is just to go forward and ask for repairs. But when we're in a competitive market with multiple offers, what is the seller going to want? Are they going to want the buyer who says, nope, I'm not going to ask for any repair requests, or are they going to want the buyer who asks for repairs? They're not going to want repairs. So be prepared to buy it as is, but with an inspection. The other option is to not even get an inspection. This just moves the process along that much quicker. It's something that the sellers obviously feel even better about than the fact that you're not going to ask for any requests. But that might give you a little bit of heartburn. It gives me a little bit of heartburn because you don't know what you're buying. Believe it or not, this is common in a lot of markets that are much hotter than ours is. Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, the whole West Coast has basically kind of gotten away from inspections. A lot of times they're doing the inspections before they even make an offer. But it isn't completely unheard of. The other thing that we can do is what's known as an appraisal gap waiver. And this comes down again to money. So let's say you're getting a mortgage, and we're going to go back to that $500,000 property. and you make an offer and say, we are going to do an appraisal gap waiver from wherever our offer is at 550 down to 500,000. So if it comes in, the appraisal comes in at 525 or it comes in at 500, we're going to make up that difference with our mortgage. So we're not going to come back and ask the seller to make up the difference, come down in their price. Again, this is something that the seller loves because they don't have to worry about losing any money. And this is pretty common. This happens a lot. Now, what this is going to affect is your loan to value. So if you're planning on putting down 20%, so $100,000 on that $500,000 house, and it comes in at 25,000 low or 50,000 low, you're no longer putting 20% down. You're putting 10%, 5%, something like that. So there is risk to you, but it's one way again to win with sellers. One final thing that we can do as buyers to make our offer more attractive to sellers is earnest money. So remember, earnest money is a show of good faith that you intend to go through with the purchase. That money gets credited to you unless for some reason you decide you just don't want to buy the house after all the contingencies have been removed. So financing, appraisal, inspection, that sort of thing. Earnest money, there is no set amount. It can be as low as we want to offer and as high as we want to offer. The more we offer, the more the seller likes. Even though it's not something that they're in most cases going to touch or get, they like to see that it's high. That shows that you're more interested. Typically, we put down anywhere from 3 to 5% of the sales price. One of the things that we can do is we can go to 10%. We can go to 20%. We can make the money non-refundable. So if you decide that like the inspection doesn't go well and you really don't want to buy this house, you would lose the earnest money. That's non-refundable earnest money. So there's a couple of different things. Increase it, make it 10%, 20%. The other thing is make it non-refundable or make a portion of it non-refundable. Things that we can talk about. Again, more things to rattle around in your brain, give you a little bit of heartburn, but something that we definitely should consider. So those are the main ones. All of those probably are like rattling around in your head going, oh my gosh, this is scary. This is something that I don't know about. And I just want to tell you that we go through this every week, every month, every year. We have been doing this for the last 4 years. We know how to navigate multiple offers. Doesn't mean we're always going to get them, but we know how to structure the offer so that you have the best chance of getting your offer accepted. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. I'm sure that you will. I would be shocked, and I'd also probably be a little worried if you don't have any questions about any of this because it's big stuff. But we're going to get you a house.